Our special guest today, Melbourne Cup winning owner Nick Williams, has been good enough to join us. Nick, it's got a nice ring to it, hasn't it? Melbourne Cup winning owner. It's what everyone aspires to in racing.
Oh, it certainly has, Richo. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to join you.
Great to have you.
It's winning any race at Flemington's a joy, but obviously the first Tuesday in November is something very special.
And what is so important about it for you and your family? I mean, through your dad, what is it about the Melbourne Cup that has been so enticing? It's become like an obsession.
Yeah, it probably has become an obsession. We've been fortunate enough over the years to have a lot of success in a lot of the good races in Australia, but the Melbourne Cup is such a challenge. It's a handicap. It's 2 miles. The sprint races, you don't have to train the horses. It's an 18-month or 2-year process to get a horse ready for the Melbourne Cup, and when it comes off, it's the most unbelievably satisfying thing you can ever come across. It's I guess the reason it's so satisfying is because it's so terribly hard.
Yeah. Well, you've made it a little easier to win in recent years. We'll get to that in a moment. But what are your memories of your dad's first cup? You would have been a little slip of a lad, wouldn't you?
In 1981, I remember it well. I was 12. He actually had a double on the day. He had another horse win called That's the Time. Won a race called the Hardy Brothers from memory. That was Hardy Brothers. That was Christopher Skase, of course.
Yeah.
But anyway, no. Look, it had been an obsession of his at that point. He'd had plenty of success in racing up to then. But he and TJ Smith plotted a plan for that horse. It took it from Adelaide right through to November. Adelaide in the winter, I think it was a pretty big result for him that day, and it started something that hasn't stopped in the ensuing years.
Just a Dash will win the Melbourne Cup. Just a Dash wins it well. 2 legs to well, Lorena.
Yeah, Just a Dash, the horse's name. I think it's fair to say when we look at your family's connection with the Melbourne Cup, you've gone through all the various phases. That phase was the horse that sort of beats the handicapper and the sort of the tough Australian/New Zealand horse that's no superstar, but a great handicapper.
They're welter horses, really.
Yeah.
That's what they were at the time. Those horses wouldn't make the field today. And, if one did fluke making the field, he'd run in the last 3 or 4. What the VRC have done, and, we're so lucky in Australia. We've got our best race at the best race course, arguably the best race course in the world.
Yeah.
What they've done since 1993 I suppose really it started in 1985 when Foster's sponsored the race. We were fortunate enough to win it that year as well, but that took it to another level. And then subsequently in 1993, when the international started coming, and Dermot Weld, of course, had success in 93, it's really put the Melbourne Cup on. It's on terms of the great races of the world. And, I'm really lucky in my racing life to have been able to go to some of the great carnivals of the world. And, there's none better than Flemington, I can assure you of that. It's the Cup Week at Flemington is certainly as good as anything you'll see anywhere. But it's when you go to Longchamp or you go to Ascot or any of the Hong Kong. It's a thrill having anything to do with a Group 1 race, but it's nothing like the Melbourne Cup. And, everyone, when you go overseas these days, talks about the Melbourne Cup because there's 100,000 people. It's a public holiday. I come back to Joseph O'Brien. He was absolutely gobsmacked what happened after winning that race. Joseph and his family have won a lot of races over the years.
Yeah.
But it's fair to say that winning a race and then essentially being locked up for 2 days with the media because there's press conference after press conference, interview after interview. It's something he's never seen anywhere in the world, and he's been everywhere. And I think it's just so fantastic that here we are in Melbourne, Australia. We've got, as I say, got a great race course in Flemington. And, it's not just the Melbourne Cup; it's the entire week. It's the grand final of Australian racing, and it always has been, always will be. But it's one of the great events of the world.
It was worth $1 million, as you've touched on. First ever $1 million Cup. What are your memories of that Royal Melbourne Cup? What a nuisance! Another fascinating story. In many ways, he was broken down. You nursed him back to health and fitness. You were a little older then, so you would have appreciated that one more.
I certainly, I do remember that well. And Johnny Marr, that was the sort of first time we had, if you like, a private trainer in Johnny Marr. And, they all did a fantastic job with that horse because he was seriously broken down. We bought him as a tried horse out of New Zealand. I think he was owned by the curator of the Cambridge Racecourse, actually. He was
right.
And, they used to feed him out of his kitchen window, out of their kitchen window, I should say. He lived in the backyard. But, no, they did a wonderful job. He was a horse that had a lot of problems. And, that's about the era. He was a Just a Dash type horse. They were still those types of horses at that point, but they weren't far away from changing. And, that was a terrific day, obviously, and it was fantastic for Dad. And it was a really long-term plan to get that horse to that race. He won the Duke of Norfolk at Flemington as well, and the year before, and it was it was 18 months in the making, and he got there by the smallest of margins.
What a nuisance goes the Corrie May. Corrie May, and what a nuisance! What a nuisance wins the fastest Melbourne Cup.
And ridden by one of the great guys in racing in Paddy Highland.
Wonderful man. It's certainly he's been he and my father were knocking about to get along before I can remember, but they're great buddies, and they've gone through all the highs and lows of racing, and I've got shocking memories of Pat's horrific fall in Adelaide, but that day was very, very special, and I think one of the lasting memories I've got was that I think they were having lunch, Dad and Pat, the day after in the city somewhere. And Pat said he'd better go because he had to ride on Oaks Day, obviously. And Dad disappeared from the table and came back and said, "You don't need to worry about that, son, because you haven't got any rides anymore. Stay here." And fortunate that the horses Pat was riding on Oaks Day were Dad's, so he just scrapped.
Oh, that is brilliant. You produced a Derby winner who ended up becoming a Melbourne Cup winner who... When you won a Derby, you won a Melbourne Cup, you won a Turnbull, yet I would still argue we didn't see the best of the endurance beast that was efficient. By gee, he was a good horse.
He's the only horse in my time, and I sort of regard Mahogany as before my time. He was obviously a super horse that Dad had, but he's the only horse in my time being intimately involved in our racing business that I think we've had a genuine star. He's far and away the best horse that I've ever had anything to do with. He was never sound. He broke down he actually broke down in the Derby. We actually declared him to run in the Melbourne Cup as a 3-year-old, and that morning his leg was no good, and we got him back, and he mixed his form, through the following year, but peaked again on the first Tuesday in November. But once he got to his trip of 1.5 miles, he was a world-class horse. He could have won any of the major races in the world. We haven't had one like that since, and he holds a very dear place, certainly in our heart. And
some people follow the follow the passions of their parents. Others move away. You could have gone into all different areas. You've got a passion for sailing. You could have gone into other parts of the family business, but I know and sense and see the passion you have for racing. Why racing for you?
Well, what happened with me is that Dad's always been a great strategist with racing. We're not the sort of people. Hell, he certainly wasn't the sort of person to turn up at Flemington on Saturday and book a table in the members' dining room and watch the races. He was obsessed with the process of getting horses to the particular races to give them their best chance, and it's something I've inherited off him. And I've got to say, very fortunately, through our first at Flemington and then at Macedon Lodge, having our own private stable, I've been privy to watching the process of training horses. I wouldn't ever suggest that I'm a horseman in any way, shape or form, but I've been a very keen observer. And what these guys go through to get horses to peak on on the day that matters is quite extraordinary. And the planning that goes into it and the strategy, it's a wonderful, wonderful process. And so I really enjoy that process of going through it all. And that's really the race day for me. It's the culmination of long-term plans, or it's a stepping stone in a plan. But I love the horse, and I love all that goes into it, and not just our own horses. I really enjoy watching some of the great trainers we've got around here at the moment. Planning courses to races. I enjoy watching the 2-year-olds, for instance. I think watching Gay, what she did this year with Farnan, it inspires me watching them. Whether you've got to be very careful with those horses to make them peak on the day. And James Harron and his team did it with King's Legacy through, gave it a very unconventional preparation that won the size produce of the Champagne Stakes. So I enjoy watching those processes, and I love it when it comes off. And none more than what Danny O'Brien did with Vow and Declare last year. I've got to say I didn't enjoy the process much on Cup Day myself, but it led to them. He didn't do what people normally do with those horses, and he got the result, and it's a great credit to him.
And you've changed the way that you do your business, and you've changed the sort of horses that you've been able to buy. And when you think about the last 3 Melbourne Cups, you think about Green Moon, the Irish bred, you think about the Germans there with Almandon, and then a European 3-year-old through England in Rekindling, all very different stories, but so unique.
Yeah, they are. Green Moon, we bought him as a 3-year-old. He was a very good horse in Europe. He lost his way when we had, that's what gave us the opportunity to buy him. But he was a good horse. He had a shocking temperament, and he was probably mishandled a little bit up there through his 3-year-old year, and he'd become sour, and we just gave him a good break, and he refound his form. But he was a good horse. Almandon won a good race in Germany. It's a pity Germany. There's been some good stories out here from Germany, but their industry's going through very tough times, and I don't think their racing is the calibre it was even 3 years ago or 5 years ago. It's pretty grim in Germany these days, unfortunately. And Rekindling, of course, we bought as a yearling. So, and we bought him out here as a 3-year-old. So he's, they are all different stories. But we watch. I really enjoy racing, whether it's at Flemington, Wangaratta, Ascot, Goodwood. I'll watch the races anywhere. And Dad's the same. He doesn't sleep. He loves watching the European racing as well as the Australian racing. He can tell you what's running at Donald or at Longchamp. He knows all the forms. So it's like everything. It's become a global industry, but isn't it wonderful that I think one of the centerpieces of that industry globally is in our backyard here in Melbourne. It's Flemington Racecourse. It's track. It's far and away the best track in this country, and it's got the best facilities.
Yeah, and also talking about the Melbourne Cup and the impact it's had. You mentioned Rekindling. I was lucky enough to go to Stringston, out the middle of England, right near Wales, where that horse was bred. And there's the family there with their little tiny farm, and the Melbourne Cup, and talking about the emotion of being up early in the morning and watching it. It's just incredible the impact a race here has around the world.
Well, it is. It's a worldwide event. And, the truth is, that it is the only worldwide event we have. They're not easy to come by, to be fair.
No.
In this country, the Melbourne Cup is, in the racing world, it's in the absolute top echelon. And it's, I honestly believe that the Melbourne Cup is Melbourne's postcard to the world. In Sydney, they've got the Harbour Bridge and they've got the Opera House. Well, we've got the Melbourne Cup. And, it's people, whether they're in racing or out of racing, they're constantly amazed, aren't they, about a public holiday for a horse race, and the way it genuinely does stop the nation. It's the folklore that people now understand around the world about schools stopping, and everyone's got an interest in the Melbourne Cup, and what a great thing that is.
I've been lucky enough to go to one of the Melbourne Cup celebrations. It was the year that Rekindling knocked off Johannes Vermeer. And I thought it was fascinating that the owners were in the both horses, yet they seemed disappointed because they'd had their $10 each way on Johannes Vermeer.
Yeah, well, we had a big hand in the Cup that year. And as Michael Gadinsky, who's one of the guys in the horses with us, likes to point out, he said, not only did we run first and second, but we did run last and second last as well. He said, so, which is true. So, but yeah, look, Rekindling was a bit of a surprise, I suppose. Johannes for me was sort of our fancied runner, I guess, be the best way to put it. Joseph was always keen on the 3-year-old, obviously, but it was a shock because have a horse in a race with a pink cap, but because we had a number of runners with our colours, he wore a pink cap, and you thought, when Benny Millen kicked for home on JV, you thought he was home, and you'd see this pink cap coming and go, oh no, we're going to get beat here, and it sort of takes a couple of seconds to realise it's all right, we're getting beaten by ourselves.
Wearing it down, Johannes Vermeer and Rekindling, stride for stride, Rekindling has won the Emirates.
I had the great privilege of catching up also with Aidan O'Brien, and his recollection of that cup was remarkable. Of course, he trained Johannes Vermeer, and he said he was holidaying and his whole family was around.
Yeah, they watched it.
And when Johannes Vermeer kicked clear, he just stopped for a moment and realised that the whole family were barracking for Joseph to beat him.
Yeah, that's told me that story as well. He said, when JV hit the front, there was deathly silence in the room, but when Joseph's horse started coming, they all started hollering and cheering. And he said to me, he knows where he stands in the pecking order in the family.
You going to win the Melbourne Cup this year?
Couldn't tell you that Richo. We need to wait 5 or 6 months for that, don't we? But let's hope that we're at least at the Melbourne Cup to watch it and watch Cup Week. That'd be terrific. We're obviously going through a tough time in the world at the moment, but I'd just be happy to be there, to be honest with you. But we'll certainly be trying our best to be winning, and I can assure you of that. We've got a group of horses both here and in Ireland that we're having a go with, and it's the greatest week of the year, and I can't wait to be there. I hope.
Oh, mate, keep up your passion for racing. We look forward to you winning more Melbourne Cups and winning more races at fabulous Flemington. Good on you, buddy.
No trouble at all. Happy to be a part of this any time for the VRC. It's they're what racing's all about.